Matt, how do you feel about Tyreek Hill? Are you like actually? I'm going to ask you the hard question. Are you worried about all these kids? Like, I don't think injury is going to take out Tyreek Hill. I just think
It's up to
I
12.
think it's
Is it up to
Well,
12?
I
yeah,
think
Yeah.
it's
I
up there.
think he's
Welcome into the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It is me, Jagger May. And as you can see, we have a very special Jeffless show. With me is Joey. He is my Jeff replacement for the week, maybe permanent if he does a good job. Don't tell Jeff. And then with me is Matt. He is one of our IDP guys, and he's just a good ball knower. And unlike me, like I said, guys, I bring in the real people who do write because even though I say I do, I never do because I'm an editor and I'm entirely too busy. But since again Jeff is gone, we're gonna have so much fun and make him feel bad. So,
Mhm.
and again, you've seen the show enough to know that we hate vets here because we're a dynasty show. But to have a little fun, I made an entire vet draft, and I'm going to force us to take all these players and talk about them because your advice can't just be to sell them. With that being said, Matt, since you are the newest guest on here, we will let you have first pick. And keep in mind, guys, vets, these are running backs on second or third contracts, wide receivers, I picked 29 and up, QBs 30 and up, or they just have the vibes of an old person, whatever I just felt. This is just random. Matt, go ahead with your first pick.
well. I think vibes of an old person might be the best way to sum up vets in Dynasty because I know a lot of times they get undervalued because of their age. And while I don't think my player is going to be undervalued, I do think that people forget just how good he is, and that is Christian McCaffrey. CMC, look, I'm not a Madden curse guy. All right, so that's not going to happen. I believe that he has shown us that this is the peak offense that he is going to play in. So whether we're on the downslope of his career, whether or not we're going to see a plateau with his production, I do believe that this is the best version of McCaffrey that we are going to get with the Shanahan offense. I know he's going number one or number two in redraft leagues as well, but I think in Dynasty he can still be a player that you could build around. Now I know this kind of goes against kind of what we were saying off air here, Jagger, but I believe that CMC is the best player playing at a position that we have undervalued tremendously in this sport. And if you can get the best at an undervalued position, it's going to amplify the rest of your roster. It's going to bring you to a different sort of tier within your league because you have the best player at a certain position. So that is why I took Christian McCaffrey, even though he may give you old person vibes.
Yeah, that makes sense, and especially like he keeps doing it. And we, talked a little bit off air of these guys that, you hear the term "built different," and I don't know of a better term to be honest about some of these that Christian McCaffrey may be there. But again, we had this conversation that he is a very specific rosterable player. I know that some believe in like you just get players that help you win, and it doesn't matter. Just having them will help you win. I just don't believe in that in Dynasty because you're taking a Faustian deal. And at the end of the day, that long term value matters. So it's not someone that I would particularly roster to begin with. Um, Even in a rebuild because he costs so much. Joey, what do you feel about CMC?
I mean, the last 3 seasons in a row, 19.9 PPR fantasy points per game. I honestly think, Jagger, it's a little too soon to have him on this list. I think we need to wait to see some fall off from him. I don't know if we've really even seen that yet. He's only 28. I do think he turns 29 at the middle of the season, if I remember correctly. So yeah, maybe it is time for him to be on the list. But yeah, he would have been my number one pick. I can't get too mad at Matt for taking him before me. But 100 more fantasy points last year than the second player up next to him in PPR. So I think that speaks volumes right there. CMC's number one pick in this, I don't mind at all.
Hey, he actually turned 28 in June, so you have him 28 the entire season. Not sure if that matters
awesome
for you Dynasty folks, but that's a big deal to me. He's 2 years away
One
from
more
30.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, when you consider that, like running backs, you're at most they're if you get them as a rookie, they're a 4-season lease. You got to think of them like that at most. And then when you get up there, you're playing season to season anyway. But again, it's just if you're coming out of a fresh rebuild, unless you do have like the roster and manpower to do it. I'm not saying I love AD Mitchell, but if AD Mitchell is your wide receiver 3, you're probably not ready. Like don't go out and go buy CMC and or whatnot there. But he's clearly someone that can take you from I guess like a pretender to a contender very quickly, depending on your build of roster. Football Guys has him as an RB4, and again, we are eerily a lockstep with Keep Trade Cut at the RB4. But again, the running backs are pretty chalky for the most part. It's crazy that a running back this old has retained this much value for so long. Before we let Joey take his next pick, we're going to take a moment to let you like and subscribe and do all the social media stuff that anyone on YouTube has ever asked you to do. More importantly, if you're on our audio side, make sure to leave us a review. Let Jeff know that he's been replaced by Joey. I don't have the heart to tell him that. So just make sure to give us 5 stars and say, Joey, you're the new Jeff. And I'm sure Jeff is going to take that well. More importantly, go over to our website where we have a whole lot of new fun tools coming out, all of our rankings and articles from people like Matt who are smarter than me and know how to read and write. And before we get going, Joey, I think I know who you're going to pick, and I feel like I'm going to get sniped even though it's beginning, so be gentle.
I mean, I'm going to take Tyreek Hill, back-to-back seasons, 1,700 yards. He is 30, but he is one of the elite players at his position. I think he's got at least 3 more seasons left. I like to play Dynasty in a 3-year window. I know we're kind of drafting vets in a different aspect here, but I am totally confident, happy if I'm in a Dynasty startup, taking Tyreek Hill to have him on my team, to have him for the next 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years is bold. It's just and maybe I'll become one of those people who adjust, but it's hard for me. If I already have him, I'm cool with it, but it's hard for me to pay for him. So like, what is the most that you're willing to pay for Tyreek Hill in Dynasty? And is this like, I know that I'm making you draft them, but like, would you go out and go get Tyreek Hill? Is that your kind of strategy?
I would probably mid to late second round be happy taking Tyreek Hill. In my Dynasty rankings, I had him like 18th overall. So in my redraft rankings, of course, he'd be like almost top 5 at this point. I need to look. I think he's like 6th overall. So move him down 12 spots in Dynasty. That's where I'm comfortable. Mid to end of the second round.
What's crazy is like that's not who I thought you would take at all.
Really?
Yeah, that's not. Football Guys has him as wide receiver 12, keep trade cut, wide receiver 10, a little bit more bullish. That's basically where I've seen him go in drafts, and kind of what Joey just kind of said as well. At the earliest he'll go towards the turn. If you got pretty savvy dudes, they'll take him 3rd round. Matt, how do you feel about Tyreek Hill? Are you like, actually, I'm going to ask you the hard question. Are you worried about all these kids? Like, I don't think injury is going to take out Tyreek Hill. How do you think?
Up to 12?
I think he's definitely getting reps in the offseason. I do believe that we are seeing Tyreek Hill get the most volume, believe it or not, that he's gotten in his career, even post Mahomes, which I think is kind of wild. And a lot of times with players, when they hit their 30s, we start talking about the physical ailments, how they start to lose a step. Well, I think if Tyreek Hill lost a step, he's probably still in the top tier of the NFL. I think he's that athletic. I think he's that type of guy. I have him as 20th overall, wide receiver 14. So I'm kind of a little bit less than what you guys have said, but I am kind of with you. I don't think it's over. I know that you're not a huge Tyreek Hill fan here, Jagger, maybe acquiring him. And I don't know what I would give up to acquire him at this age unless I was contending. If I was contending, I'd probably be a little bit risky, a little bit of chips in the middle. But I think that if you have him, you're content with having him, and you're probably less likely to potentially give him up just because of the production we're seeing. I mean, last season, he had his best year. He had his best season. This was with Tua. So say what you want about the Dolphins and their offense. Mike McDaniel clearly has something going on, and it's making Tyreek Hill a very valuable asset to your team.
The only thing I want to add to what Matt said is post Mahomes would be a great fantasy teammate.
I thought that
you get all the other points.
I said it.
But yeah, post Mahomes, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good. And I guess for one, I'm comfortable drafting Tyreek Hill. It's trading for him, and I wouldn't be able to trade more than a 1st, and I don't think I could get him for that. Like maybe a 2nd, and maybe if I'm giving up a player, it's a lot easier because like a pick is something that gains gains in value. Whereas something, like a player, you give up a depreciating asset, you'd be willing to eat it. But drafting him, I'd be able to do that, and I would have to be committed to winning at that point. I'm not trading back to acquire value. I'm probably just taking best available and staying put. I'm up next, and here's where I thought you would go. I get Christian McCaffrey pretty high. I would take him first, but my second pick would actually be Dak Prescott, especially if you're playing Superflex here. He's relatively young, and people have playoff Cowboys Dak Prescott in their brain, and not just fantasy Dak Prescott in their brain. Do you know what fantasy Dak Prescott does? He wins you games. Who gives a shit if he? Sorry, Joe.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that was my first Sorry Joe on the show. 11 minutes in, we'll mark that. But who cares if he throws an interception to get to the NFC Championship or an NFC Championship? That's not your problem. He's still going to have a job going forward. You remember Kirk Cousins choked as well, and he still has a job. If anything, Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott probably have similar resumes. They've led incredibly productive offenses that have brought home zero hardware. And yet we're comfortable drafting Kirk Cousins. Granted, he's going a lot later. Dak Prescott's a lot younger, and he's attached to an offense that he's already comfortable in, at least for a year. It doesn't make much sense to me that he falls as far as he does. And people are even taking Justin Herbert over Dak Prescott. And I'm not hating. I guess I don't hate that too much because they're close, but it's pretty rough for me. Matt, are you a Prescott hater, or are you able to separate the player from the fantasy player from the real life player?
Well, this is probably how my draft would have started. 1, 2, 3, exactly these 3 picks. So I already feel like we're kind of in lockstep here. I like Dak. I took Dak in the first round of Scott Fish, which got a lot of boos and hisses, but I do believe it's because you're going to get touchdown production from him. I mean, like him or not, like you said, I don't worry about football as much post week 17. Like, don't get me wrong, love the NFL as a game, but I'm trying to win fantasy championships, and I think that Dak Prescott as your quarterback, especially depending on where you can get him, and we're seeing him fall in some drafts, which just blows my mind. I think he's the type of player that you can win games based on the value that you can acquire him. I also believe that he is in a contract year, his second time around, or not contract year, but he's going for a prove-it deal, basically. And we saw the last time that he was in a situation like this, he did very well. He became the Dallas Cowboys franchise quarterback, which is arguably the most pressure-filled position in all of sports. So I don't think that he is going to shy away from these particular regular season bright lights, although we see him kind of crumble a bit in the playoffs, which I'm sure sours a lot of football fans on his fantasy value. But we have to separate the art from the artist, kind of like you said. We have to separate playoff Dak from regular season Dak. And regular season Dak wins games. So Dak Prescott, I'm very high on him. I think he's appropriately selected here at number 3.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I'm glad you brought up Scott Fish. He was my QB2 on Scott Fish, and that's one I've teetered on if I love it or not. But people were talking about pocket passers are overrated. Pocket passers that don't throw touchdowns are overrated. Like Justin Herbert's probably overrated in Scott Fish Bowl, but like Dak Prescott was still the 8, like a top 10 overall scoring with last season's stats. And you'd hope that they got a little bit better. I don't think they did. I don't think they got significantly worse, Joey, I know you're a big Jared Goff guy, and you think about 2 pocket passers that are in effective offenses. Is there a big difference between Jared Goff and Dak Prescott to you?
Just their contracts. No. Honestly, if I had to pick a quarterback that I want to score me a lot of fantasy points, which is the point of fantasy football, I would probably pick Dak Prescott. He's not as safe as I think Jared Goff is. I'm much more happy with Jared Goff's floor than I think what Dak can give us. But for me, the issue with Dak isn't how good he is when he's on the field, because when he's there, he's incredible. It's the 2 seasons where he's missed 3 or 4 games. When he's on the field for 16 or more games, he's throwing for over 4,000, if almost 5,000 yards in 2019. So I don't mind having Dak Prescott on my team as my quarterback. And probably the only reason I didn't take him second overall is I was devaluing quarterbacks in this veteran draft because I didn't think we were starting 2. I thought we were just going to start 1. So if we're starting 2 quarterbacks, I would have taken Dak Prescott second overall. But Joey, not looking at the settings, this is why it's always important to know your settings, folks, in your leagues. Jagger knew the settings, gets a steal Dak Prescott at third overall.
Well, Jagger's the moderator and was just kind of cheating and decided to do it. But like it doesn't matter.
The fix is in.
Also, guys, it's snakes. So I'm gonna pick again.
Take the other quarterback, Jagger.
Breaking news.
Yeah, I'm diabolical. And I'm gonna pick Davante Adams, and I'm gonna be guys. I just watched Netflix receiver, and I know, guys. I know we do this with Hard Knocks. We do this all the time, but people keep telling me, but it's Davante. And I think I see it, but it's Davante. Actually understanding that this guy's a nut and then remembering that he's still super good. His quarterback was just Jimmy Garoppolo and his coach was just, I'm already forgetting his name, Josh McDaniel, that, if we're going to take loners, Davante's just as good as Tyreek Hill, especially if you're in full PPR. He's not going to have the big play touchdowns or something like that. But is there a safer floor than Davante, Joey?
No, there's not. I mean, every year we push him down because of his age. He's 31 now, but every year he proves us wrong why we should have had him higher. I believe he finished a wide receiver. Was it wide receiver 5 last year?
Yeah,
and
it's top 10.
Yeah. So when are we going to start doubting Davante Adams? I kind of look at him as a super Mike Evans. Like when Mike Evans stops getting 1,000 receiving yards per season, then I'll start ranking him lower. But until then, I'm going to put him right back where he was. So I think Davante Adams going 4th overall makes a lot of sense here. And if he goes to the Jets, that's even more exciting for the next couple of years for him. As Breece Hall thinks he's going to. I don't know if you saw that interview with Kay Adams.
Yeah, there's been 2 where they said it's basically a done deal. And I'm like, I'm not sure. And I don't love that for Garrett Wilson, but also do kind of love that for Garrett Wilson. That's an odd feeling. I guess the only big thing with Davante is that he is still a Raider, and his quarterback is now Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. That's probably going to be both of them. Let's be honest. Yeah. Matt, does that worry you, or do you still think that that's better than what they had at the beginning of last season?
I do think that there are certain players that I don't want to say are quarterback proof, but they kind of have an elevated floor just because of their talent, and then the quarterback can amplify that situation. And the Raiders make me a little nervous. I think they make most of the fantasy football community nervous at pretty much every offensive position. But Davante Adams is one of those guys that I think can just elevate your quarterback play, because I too watched receiver, and the first thing I took away from it was Davante Adams is the real deal. I truly believe that he's still an apex player in this game. He's only had 1 season under 1,000 yards since 2018, and he had 997 on only 83 catches. And he's in the hundreds to 110s on most seasons. So I believe that if he continues to get that type of target, that type of volume, and those receptions, that he is going to be in the top tier of receivers. And I kind of like Joey's analysis with Mike Evans. Until I see it not happen, I'm not going to be the guy to predict that it didn't happen, because I'm not going to go against trends that are 8 years long. I think that Davante Adams is a high-level player. I think he will continue to be one, regardless of quarterback, although I do believe if they can improve quarterback play, whether it's with him being better this offseason or them perhaps acquiring somebody at the trade deadline or something, I think Davante Adams will still be a viable floor to draft or acquire highly.
Yeah, and again, he's the perfect receiver because he has the old man skills, what I call. Like Larry Fitzgerald was big, red zone threat, but he could run routes to get open. So if anything, I told this is what I told Jeff is I like old receivers if they can play in the slot. Davante can play in the slot. It's not like Des Bryant. We saw him flame out because as soon as those knees started squeaking, the production stopped. So I'm willing to pull that trigger. Joey, it is back to you. Who is your next pick?
So I'm going to get a little personal to explain my pick here. In a few weeks, I'm going to be going to New York City, and I'm really excited about it, going back to New York. But some people need to get the heck out of New York to gain fantasy value. Saquon Barkley, you are my next pick. I don't think Saquon on the Eagles it might just be the best season we've ever seen him have. He's finally playing on a winning team. And I know the Giants have probably had one good season since he's been there. But getting behind that Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, Jason Kelce's gone, so I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be running the tush push as much. That's going to give more goal line carries to Saquon. He is a difference maker. He's only 28 years old, so he's still got a few years left in the tank. He can just stay on the field. I think he could easily help you win fantasy championships.
Yeah, and I love the point that you made up about Jason Kelce, but just despite even the talent that Saquon has, is that I think the big outlier why we saw the Eagles have more success with the tush push is like, yeah, it's having Jalen Hurts, but there's been there's a lot of mobile quarterbacks in the league. None of them have Jason Kelce ahead of them. So I think that we might see that take a step back. But also, again, like DeAndre Swift and Saquon Barkley are not equal. And I am a DeAndre Swift truther. Like Saquon is just better in almost every facet of the game than DeAndre Swift is. Mm-hmm. So, and especially if you're going to pay a running back like that, I expect them to use them. Are you worried about touchdown equity at all, Matt? Or are you just like just draft it, giggle, and hope he stays healthy?
Well, I don't think you should worry about if touchdowns are going to hold their value. I think that you need to prepare for players who are in the best situation to score them. And I believe that because Saquon's now an Eagle, he's probably in the best position of his career to score multiple touchdowns. We forget that when he burst into the league his rookie year, he had 1,300 yards rushing and 700 yards receiving on 350 total touches. That is unbelievable. Now, he's not going to get 350 touches, but he was that dude. And it was because he was built differently, to bring back from an earlier player perspective here. I think that it's no surprise, maybe not surprise, but there's no we need to look into the fact that he went to Philadelphia. He went to a division rival, and I believe he feels like there's something to prove here, and I feel like he's going to angry run this year. I think he's going to specifically go hard against the Giants when he plays them, and I believe that because he stayed within the division, he wants to make that them not believing in him hurt a little bit more, and I think he's going to be as motivated as ever. And Joey, I don't want to step on you here, but he's actually 27, so we have another year for him. We have another full year for him to avoid that dreaded 30 or 29 or 28, or with running backs, it might as well be 25 when we start to write them off a little bit. So I'm very, very high on Saquon, and I got sniped here. So I'm actually happy that I got to correct Joey there because you took my guy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wheels up for Saquon.
Absolutely.
That leaves you, Matt. Who is your next pick?
Well, I'm scrambling a little bit here, so I'm going to have to take somebody who I probably would have waited till later, but the more I think about him, the more I like him, and that's Derrick Henry. It's the same analysis that I had with Davante Adams. I'm just not going to predict that he is going to be done until I actually see it happen. And while he was phenomenal for the Titans, I mean, I think he's arguable for the Hall of Fame. I don't think that's too outlandish to say. I think with the Ravens, who we've seen have a style that is a little bit more inside the tackles, a little bit more of a – I don't want to say it's slow moving because we can see Lamar Jackson pop off every now and again, but they're more of a methodical – we want to just get 10 yards and then focus on the next 10 yards and focus on the next 10 yards. And Derrick Henry may be the ultimate player to build a team around with that. And then you have the Lamar Jackson factor where teams are not going to just be able to load the box because Lamar Jackson can pop outside on some options. I think that this offense is going to be a scary version of an old school style offense where it's going to feel plodding, but then you're going to see these like Adrian Peterson-like runs where all of a sudden it's going to be 80 yards. You're like, oh my God, where'd that come from? Well, Derrick Henry ran past the 8 guys in the box, and now you've got 3 guys trying to tackle. I think that Derrick Henry is going to have one of these resurgent seasons that's going to remind everybody why he's so good and why it was such a big deal when the Ravens did pick him up. And I think it's going to be a wake-up call for the AFC North specifically.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's almost same thing but different with Joey taking Saquon is we already saw Gus Edwards get 10 touchdowns. So Gus Edwards is not Derrick Henry. And I know people keep talking about outliers. Like, well, that was like best case scenario, blah, blah. The Ravens have put up rushing touchdowns for my entire life watching the Ravens, they've done that. People have argued with me that they're not a good passing offense because of the amount they rush, and now we're concerned about Derrick Henry. Make it make sense, folks. Especially at cost, I am actually buying Derrick Henry. Like if someone will give me a second for Derrick Henry, cha-ching, see you in the playoffs, baby. Like, and again, it's one of those people showed me, they're like, well, his stats went down, and it's efficiency. And I'm like, yeah, he did. But like, he was on the worst Titans team. And did you see them touchdowns? Like, all it takes is one weak little arm tackle. And then a safety is not going to stop Derrick Henry. It's not going to happen yet. It makes no sense here. I love it. I guess Joey, are you still high on the Henry hog like the rest of us? Or
you guys pretty much hit all the points. Let me just say something about Derrick Henry. When players switch teams, it's kind of weird sometimes, and you see them in their new jerseys. I saw the Derrick Henry Ravens jersey picture, and I was like, yeah, that looks right. It looks like he was made to be in that jersey. I feel like he fits that Ravens profile. And I do think that there is such a thing as narrative analysis where, yeah, it just is. And I think Derrick Henry just is in Baltimore. People will talk that he took a couple steps back last year. His yards per carry went down. But he's now playing on a better team than he's ever played on before. Like,
Yeah, it's like you said. The only other team that was better was an Arthur Smith team where they had like a top 5 offensive line. Mm-hmm. The last 3 years, the Titans have had would have been their first picks in the last 2 drafts, offensive linemen. That should tell you something of what kind of team he's going to be in. Whereas the Ravens are doing what the Ravens do, which is the old cliches, like they don't rebuild, they reload. And I guess it's back to you then, Joey, with your pick.
Doesn't Matt get 2 in a row?
Yeah, the heck? We changing the snake rules now?
Wow.
Yeah, you do get 2, Matt. You're right. You're right.
Sheesh. Well, I actually, with my next pick here, I'm going to go. I don't know if maybe this is too high, but I'm a huge Kirk Cousins guy. And I think that we've seen him make players around him better at every stop. When he was even back to his Washington days, we've seen him. We were talking about pocket passers and how they can be touchdown dependent. And I think that, to a degree, you may be right there. But I do think that Kirk Cousins has the best set of playmakers he's had in his career. And that's saying a lot because he had some good guys in Minnesota. But we're going to see him. He's the perfect person that is just get the ball to your stars and let them do the work. He's going to do that. He's got a solid run game behind him, so they're going to have to respect Bijan. You have to. Are we finally going to see the Kyle Pitts emergence, or will Twitter explode? Who knows? I believe we are, because I think that Kirk Cousins knows how to get playmakers involved, and we've seen him have high-level success with the tight end position. And then finally, everybody's favorite player to argue if he's good or not is Drake London. And I think that Drake London will have probably his best season because I don't think it's hyperbolic to say this is the best quarterback he's ever played with. And I do think that matters. I think that London maybe needs a better quarterback than maybe a Davante Adams, like we were talking about earlier. But I think that with a good quarterback, we could see Drake London emerge into that top-tier receiver because we're finally seeing him get the ball where it's supposed to be placed and allowing his physical build and his skill set to maybe overpower and overmatch opposing corners. So I'm big on Kirk Cousins, and I think it's going to be because we're going to see the Atlanta Falcons really break out and surprise some people this season.
So that's the positive. Joey, we'll go to you to talk about the negative. Are you worried that he's old and coming off an Achilles injury at all, and he's on a new team? It's the 3 things all together.
Yeah, there'd be nothing more that would make me happy this coming into the season than if Atlanta just fell on their faces as a Buccaneers fan. As far as the negatives, I'm gonna get some hate for this, but I think it's on his attitude. I think when they drafted Michael Penix, what we saw to Kirk Cousins, we haven't seen before. We saw jealousy. We saw him not reacting well like a team player. And I'm afraid that might be what kills his dynasty value, is that his time might not be long in Atlanta. They didn't spend that number 9 pick for nothing. And the way he reacted to it might have made his leash a little bit shorter. Now, I do want to say something a little positive because I do feel like Kirk Cousins kind of made a dynasty trade of his own this offseason. He traded Justin Jefferson, which a lot of people say they won't do, and Jordan Addison, which might have worked out for him after today. But he got Bijan Robinson, he got Drake London, and he got Kyle Pitts. That's a heck of a lineup. I almost had a sorry Joe there to come into. I mean, he's set up for success. I think he's going to have a good season. I'm just worried, like I said, about his attitude.
Yeah, that's funny. I didn't even. That's four things, and like I think, I don't think that two things mean the same thing. I think that Atlanta's going to be fine with their weapons. Like a bad Kirk Cousins is still better than Desmond Ridder, but like Kirk Cousins may not be what we saw in Minnesota. You know, like you said, you got Justin Jefferson and you have Kevin O'Connell. You know, like say what you want about what Atlanta's done in the offseason, but you know we don't know. And he does have the Achilles injury, so I have a hard time settling for Kirk Cousins as even my QB3 in Dynasty. In granted, that's just me being nitpicky, and you know I want the most beautiful roster to post on Twitter and for people to like. And it's like we actually haven't talked about this at all. And I should have talked about this the first episode about Jordan Addison at all. I'm gonna do a detour because I can. And are you worried at all about Jordan Addison, Joey?
I mean, what is the punishment for a DUI right now in the NFL? Because did he get arrested? I'm not sure on that part of it. But if he got a DUI, he's going to serve at least a 6-game suspension, which, okay, that factors really only into this season. But do the Vikings cut him? He removed all social media mentions of the Minnesota Vikings. Is he going to the New England Patriots? I saw Andrew Cooper said that earlier, kind of tongue-in-cheek. But you do have to wonder if Jordan Addison, is he on a new team next year? And if that's the case, that might take a while for him to get up to speed.
I'd like to add to that, if you don't mind. I can't recall. I know this is like a new thing when players are a little disgruntled, they'll remove all social media mentions. I don't think I've ever seen it post a player getting in trouble. And I don't know. To me, that's kind of a red flag as an organization. If I were the Vikings and like now after the worst publicity you're going to have, and it's completely by the fault of his own. It's not like the Vikings said something and he got mad about it. It's he chose to do something that you shouldn't do, and then almost like an immediate response removed everything from the Vikings off of there. I just feel like that to me would be two red flags too close to one another, so it wouldn't shock me if he's on another team before the season starts.
Yeah, and it's a big surprise for me is here. I didn't hear the social media thing because it's kind of like Darren Waller cheating on Kelce Plum, then making a video like I feel betrayed. It's like, bro, this is the second year in a row that you've done this. Like this is you. You did this, not Kelce Plum. Like, bro, like Jordan Addison, he doesn't realize how good he has it. He has the ultimate position because he's never going to be a wide receiver one. And I've said this on the show. That's why he's a fade. Is like he's always going to be a bridesmaid, never the bride. And you, the ultimate bridesmaid next to Justin Jefferson, to where you'll make people think that you're a bride.
That's the name of honor.
Yeah, and then you poop the wedding dress, you poop the bridesmaid dress. You know, you go full like the movie Bridesmaid, like you poop the dress, and now you're deleting stuff, and you're like, it doesn't look good, man. It doesn't look good.
That's such an underrated movie.
It is an underrated movie, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, does JJ McCarthy have it as good as we think that he does? And it's kind of like a snowball effect. But that's it for that detour, and I figured that we should talk about it. Joey, it is now your pick. With that being said,
I gotta look here. I've got a guy next, and I'm gonna take Joe Mixon because I think my other guy I can get later. Yeah, Joe Mixon over on the Houston Texans now. We talk about being set up for success with Kirk Cousins. Joe Mixon set up for success. I know he's coming away from the Bengals, but there is no one behind him. As much as that hurts me to say, as much as I love Dameon Pierce, this is Joe Mixon's job. He is going to run with it there with C.J. Stroud and all those incredible wide receivers they have in Houston. I think we could see one of the best seasons out of Joe Mixon's career. He's 27. I did check on the age. He does on the 24th, because I didn't want Matt to correct me. On the 24th of July, he does turn 28. So he's no longer 27, but he's a fresh 28 coming into the season, 2 or 3 seasons left there. I would say that all these guys we've been talking about, would you say the overarching theme is like, if you're trying to win now, trade for these guys? Because it does feel like that's kind of what we're saying about each and every one of them. And as
Yeah.
far as a win now, if you're trying to win now, Joe Mixon's a perfect guy to trade for.
Yeah, and it's like you nailed it. That's kind of the thing, and it's like forcing you to make those because like a lot of these guys, especially if you're like me, I'm like I would never try to buy, a 30-year-old wide receiver. I'd never try to do that. But forcing us to with a gun to our head, you got to pick one. Why would you do it? And like what cost would that take? And I love Joe Mixon. He was going to be one of my next two picks. It's like you said, all the things that we've said about Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, we could arguably say about Joe Mixon. That like his ceiling is just as high. Like if you still believe in Dameon Pierce, I don't know what to tell you, man. You've been told all the things already, and you still believe. So like I can't reach you. They were starting Devin Singletary over him, so that should give you an example. And it's at running back isn't that hard. You've got your Saquons, your CMCs, your Bijans. Everything else, are you in a good offense? Cool. That's all what matters at running back. Are you in a good offense or are you at least a starter? Like that's all what kind of matters. So Joe Mixon is great. Joey, I'm sad. Football Guys is behind here. We have him at RB26. Keep Shred Cut has him at RB20. I think this is a rare case where I believe with RB20. Yeah, it's just like, again, who else are you drafting at that point? After who cares? It's RB12 or and then everybody else after that. Matt, where are you on Joe Mixon? Is he someone that you've tried to buy?
Well, I like what you said there, where if he's RB20, at that point you're already kind of throwing darts. And at least with this particular player, kind of what you're getting. I'm a Bengals guy. So there's a couple of negatives that I have for Mixon. Okay. I know that just maybe kind of covered that up a little bit, but he got loud towards the end of his tenure with the Bengals. There was a lot of weird, like off the field stuff going on with him. I don't know why. It was a lot of weird stuff at his house where there was like, kids doing dumb stuff or whatever. But regardless, he started to show up. He started to show up in the news more for the other than football stuff. And that's always kind of weird for me with players like Joe Mixon. And he reminds me of a boxer. His jab was like a 2-yard run. And he's going to consistently hit you with that 2-yard jab. But then eventually in the game, you will get some sort of an uppercut. You'll get some sort of a big swing. He will hit you with 10 to 15 yards. I think the days of him breaking these 30 to 40-yard touchdowns are over, and it started to see that towards the end of his tenure with the Bengals. That could be because they got Joe Burrow. When he first broke with the Bengals, he was with Andy Dalton. And we all know what the Bengals were like with Andy Dalton. So he was probably more of a focal point, and they've gone past what his capabilities are, and he's more of a traditional, like, between the tackles type of a runner. And I think with the Houston Texans, we will see a better version of Joe than we saw last year, but I still don't believe that that's going to be anything more than maybe a running back 20, maybe a running back in that range. But if you're there and you're looking for a running back who you think can get you some kind of surprise points, and maybe he's, I don't know, most teams or most players, they get on a second team, you start to get nervous, but then you talk about the Houston Texans, you're kind of excited. I mean, I'm excited to see what they're going to be like. And like I said, a Bengals fan in the AFC, and this is the biggest contender probably in the AFC besides the Chiefs, of course. But I think Mixon will have a good season. I'm just, like I said, there were some red flags there at the end of his Bengals tenure, whether it was the off-the-field stuff, and then his production was just not what we were used to seeing in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And like I think a lot of the off the field stuff was a little resolved. I think he just hangs out with ratchets. What being, I think one was his sister or something. So like, I'm sorry, Joe Mixon, please don't punch me. But
well, off the rails, Jagger. Look at you go.
So what happens when you start an independent show, and I took the training wheels off. Now I don't know what to do. With that being said, I'll go with mine, and someone I've been really bullish on now, and thanks to Dave Kluge for showing me the light because I sniped him in Scott Fish. It's George Kittle, especially when you consider that tight end have a longer age apex than most other players. Like being 29 or 30 at tight end isn't a death sentence like it is. Like look at Travis Kelce. He's 34 years old and he's still like top 5 tight end production wise, regardless if you think of his value. And George Kittle only missed 2 games last year. I think that was the most mind blowing thing for me, is that I was just like Dave was like, George Kittle only missed 2 games. I was like, no way. So I go to Sleeper like everyone else and go to look at it, and then lo and behold, like he's incredibly healthy. He's in one of the best offenses, and you're going to have variance with these 49ers players, but once you get into after the top 5, you have to accept that variance because they're going to win you weeks. You might be the George Kittle of your playoffs or something like that, and they may win your league. So I'm pretty bullish on getting Kittle now. Joey, would you take Kittle over Kelce at this point, or if you're going to take an old, would you rather just take Kelce?
If I'm going to take an old, I'm going to take Kelce. If I'm going to take an old, I don't fault you for drafting Kittle. I think Kittle have a lot more longevity, but if I'm taking an old, most likely I'm taking him to win now, so it would be Kelce.
Mm-hmm. And to give you like dynasty value, both in Keep Track and Football Guys consensus, George Kittle's the tight end 9, Kelce's the tight end 8. So this is like pretty appropriate. Matt, where are you on the Kittle Kelce complex? One of them has Taylor Swift. Does that matter for you?
I think for financials maybe, but I think that I would go with. I liked how Joey summed it up in that particular argument. It's very concise. I think it's exactly what you think of. If you're winning now, go with the best. And until Kelce shows us that he's no longer the best old guy out there, that's a pun, of course. I don't think he is good just because he's old. I think Kelce is just a generational talent, and I think that we're seeing a generational talent with arguably the best quarterback, not named Tom Brady, that the league has ever seen. So because of that, we're just going to see Kelce be better. I also think that Kittle is kind of on the negative side of the 49ers having so many weapons. I think the 49ers know that he's going to be option 2 or 3. He's never really going to be option 1. And Travis Kelce is arguably option 1 on every play. So I think you got to factor that in. But as far as Kittle overall as a player, I don't dislike Kittle. I think he's a great player. I think you can do a lot worse with an older player. I like what you said about the age apex. I think that's true. I think the tight ends take a little bit longer to develop, and they also last a little longer in the league because their skill set kind of forces their body to be a little bit more durable. You have to be able to block. You have to be able to take contact. And in this league, if you can take contact, you're going to last longer. And then, sometimes it's like Mercedes Lewis. That guy's still playing, and he's almost 40 years old. So we're seeing examples of tight ends getting older and being good for longer. That's why I'm still big on Mark Andrews. That's why those top-tier tight ends, I love Kelce, or not Kelce, I love Laporta, and I love McBride. But, the Kelces, the Kittles, the Andrews, those are the guys I'm looking at first.
Yeah, it's like when you
Kelce
miss
can
out.
do it with a broken heart.
Yeah. It's like if you miss out on the top 3, you're like Woody Harrelson wiping your tears with dollars. So I was like, I gotta take Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how I've really felt here lately. And I guess like you guys both have good selling points. 4 years does do a lot for me. And like, to be honest, skill wise, I think George Kittle's just as skilled as Kelce. And in certain sense, he's obviously a better blocker. He's just a 49er, and that offense just means high variance. So I guess I can't argue with you that much. I will say that I do think that Mahomes should matter more to me than being a 49er. Because like if Brock Purdy goes down, what is that team? We've seen that. It's not like. Do we really expect Josh Dobbs to do it? Like that was a real fun 3 weeks. People shave their eyebrows for nothing. Imagine going to work the next day and say you shaved your eyebrows for a backup quarterback.
I felt pretty dumb. You guys let me know about it when I did it, but still, we're all here.
It was really silly, but we love you anyway. But I'll go ahead and make my next pick. I got to move Derrick Henry over. This is who got Saquon? Joey got Saquon. There we go.
Yeah, I got Henry.
Yeah, sorry guys. When you do an olds draft, you have to do it the olds way, and we're using a spreadsheet like the days of old. So I'm gonna take my next pick, and now it's pretty ugly, and I think it's real ugly. it's like, which receiver do I hate the least? And I guess I'm just gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna let you have Mike Evans, Joey. I'm not gonna do this to
Thank you.
you.
I was glaring.
That's what I thought you were going to go with.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you have. I'm gonna go with Keenan Allen.
Okay.
I've been incredibly bullish on Keenan Allen. I think he's fits the mold as anyone. You would talk about who was top 5. He was top 5 last year. You know, with Justin Herbert and broke offense. Like if it wasn't for it literally was just Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen alone. So if you look at especially the talent in the vacuum, you got to think that moving to a different team would, especially with the quarterback that we hope Caleb Williams is, would help that value. He is 32 years old. He's incredibly old. This feels gross taking him this high, but again, it is a specific draft pool. So I'm willing to take, especially in PPR, to take Keenan Allen this high. Is that too high for you, Matt? I know that Mike Evans would go here normally, but I'm being nice to Joey, Matt. So give me your thoughts on Keenan Allen.
Well, first of all, remind me to never go to a birthday party with you for somebody over 30 years old, because it just seems like we're not going to have that much fun. Look, I like Keenan Allen. I've never really been as big on Keenan Allen, even through the peaks of his career, as other people, and I don't know why. He's given me no reason to hate the man. I feel like maybe he's just a boring receiver, and I think that boring receivers don't get talked about. I think that because his floor is always pretty consistent, it just doesn't excite me the way it should. That being said, I think him on this new offense, kind of a change of scenery, twilight of his career, he's going to be an important veteran in that locker room, I think. And I think that may have been a huge part of why they acquired him. Now, obviously, they would have set up Caleb Williams with as much potential as possible, but I think that it was strategic that they brought in a Keenan Allen to go alongside with DJ Moore, who we've seen both turn into a bona fide star. I think the Chicago Bears are going to be like the northern version of the Atlanta Falcons, where they're going to turn some heads, they're going to surprise some people, and it just took one off season for everybody to kind of go, oh, look at this. They changed the quarterback, and look what happened. I think that Keenan Allen will have a good year. I don't think he's going to have a great year. I think that I don't think he's going to get lost in the shuffle, because it's not like they've got like tons and tons of elite superstar talent, but I do think that they've got enough talent where he's not necessarily going to be the focal point. And this will be the first time in his career where he's likely not been the focal point of a receiving room. And I think that's important to note.
Joey, where are you at on Keenan Allen?
I love him for the role that the Bears are going to put him in. I am a big fan of when a rookie quarterback comes into the league, give them a safety blanket. Give them someone safe to throw to. Keenan Allen is a plotter. He knows exactly where he's going to go. He's going to stand there. Caleb Williams gets the ball to him. Perfect situation for a rookie quarterback coming into this league. I think through the first 8 weeks, Keenan Allen probably will be the wide receiver 1 on the Bears until Caleb Williams kind of gets up to speed a little bit. Then I think we see DJ Moore and Rome Odunze break out a little bit more. But to start the season, I love Keenan Allen there. I think he still has some time left there in Chicago. And as far as I'm looking at all these wide receivers we're listing here, outside of Tyreek Hill, if I was probably Adams too, if I was taking one to win now this season to go out and trade for, I'm going to go for the oldest guy we have listed at the position on this list, and I'm going to go out and get Keenan Allen. I love this pick for you, Jagger. Yes, I was going to take Mike Evans, but Keenan Allen would have been who I took if you took Evans.
Oh, well,
Nothing wrong with Mike Evans.
Yeah. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and pencil Joey in for Mike Evans next. right now.
Yeah.
And Joey, besides the fact that you're a Buccaneers fan, tell us about Mike Evans and why he's the Derrick Henry of wide receivers.
No, he's my favorite NFL player of all time. So thank you so much for letting me have him. No, I mean 1,000 yards every single season he's been in the league. He's done it with good quarterbacks. He's done it with bad quarterbacks. And Mike Evans, until he doesn't get me 1,000 receiving yards, and last year I think it was 14 touchdowns. Mike Evans is the real deal. And in Dynasty, he's 30. So you've got a few more years left with him. I know what I just said about Keenan Allen, but in my heart, if I'm going out and trading for a wide receiver to win a championship, I want Mike Evans on my championship winning team so that I've got my favorite player there with me. But, he's still Baker Mayfield's number one option. I heard somebody, I'm I don't want to attribute to the wrong person, so I'm not going to say who it was. But it wasn't me that called him Patty Cake because he's Baker's man. And I just thought that was the best name for Mike Evans that I've ever heard. But the only thing that I think could take away from Mike Evans this year and going forth in this Buccaneers offense is Chris Godwin is moving back to the slot. And that's where we saw Baker Mayfield sort of have his success in the past. Dave Canales has moved over to the Panthers. So I think there is going to be a change in the Buccaneers offense. I don't think you're going to see a season out of Mike Evans like you saw last year, but I still think pencil him in for 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. That's Mike Evans for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How much are you willing to pay for Mike Evans in Dynasty if you're trying to win now? Are you going to pay a first rounder, or are you going to try to do like a second plus the pick?
Second. I'd give up a second rounder for him. And that's me probably overpaying for him.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
I think a second's fair, honestly. I don't think you're overpaying there.
Okay.
I mean, he's producing still. I mean, you know, it may be hard overhead in your particular analysis, but I kind of agree with it. We've never really seen him fall off. So why do we assume it's going to happen right now? Now, obviously, if you want to see around corners, you want to try to beat the crowd there, go ahead and bet against him. But we're seeing consistent play. And in a win-now scenario, you need a receiver that you know is going to have a safe enough floor with just enough boom weeks to win. I think Mike Evans is the perfect player for that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I call him Derrick Henry is like he's such an outlier because like I normally say like I take the Keenan Allens because they just moved to slot. Like Joey, you said it perfectly. I'm a slow plotter, but I know how to release off the line and get exactly where I'm supposed to be at every play. And Mike Evans is not like that. If anything, Mike Evans is just like he's just a tight end now that they flex out. If you really think about it, like he's just like Kelce. Like Mike Evans has never been a route runner. That's why I've never liked Mike Evans. Is like I've always been, you know, a route runner type guy. That's been my you know. I guess like if you're like into redheads or something like that, that's what I'm into, a wide receiver. But like he just still produces. I don't know how I get there, but we're there. So it's phenomenal to see him produce. I'm just gonna get off this hill right now. We're gonna.
This show is awesome. Jeff needs to never come back.
I'm trying to keep it together, man.
Matt, who's your next pick?
Well, you're into redheads. I'm into Amari Cooper. He's kind of like my old receiver of this round. I'm kind of keeping with that theme here. I think we've all got kind of our favorite of this type of tier of receiver. Mine is Amari Cooper, and it's a lot of kind of what Jag and I were talking before the show. Getting through the regular season of fantasy football it requires a fair bit of skill to make the playoffs. When you're in the playoffs, it's a gamble. And Amari Cooper last year was a playoff hero. Week 15, 4 catches, 109 yards, touchdown. And then week 16, we all know 11 for 265 and 2. Now, I believe that type of thing is going to happen consistently? No. But I like having players on my team with a fair bit of risk. I don't want to build my team around a player like this. But if I can build my team around some stable floor guys, and then I have an Amari Cooper who has an ability to do this, and he's done this multiple years. It's not like he just decided like this was an outlier game of outlier games. But he has showed us an ability to have these pop-off weeks on limited amount of targets. I mean, week 9, he had 5 targets, 5 catches, 139 and a touchdown. But then you have the bad game where he'll have 3 catches on 7 targets. So that volatility scares me away from him, which is why he's probably lower than most, and he is that ugly 30 that Jagger hates. But I do believe he's a type of guy that if you've got better players around or maybe younger players that are your future and you have an Amari Cooper, there's no way that you should lack confidence potentially winning a playoff matchup with an Amari Cooper in your lineup.
Now, when I hate on 30-year-olds, it's not that I just hate them as individuals. I'm just not going to run you out as like the ex, you know, like I'll invite you over to beer, you know, like we'll do like a garden party. We'll do 30-year-old stuff. I'm just like not asking you to be an athlete anymore. You know, I'm asking you to do old people stuff. It's like, you know, like invite me to your kid's birthday party so I could say I'll go, but then I'll make an excuse the day before or something like that. Like that's what I want out of my 30-year-olds, not on my fantasy team. But for me, it's not Amari Cooper. It's Deshaun Watson. Joey, you are the face of.
You stole my joke. Go ahead.
You're the face of the Deshaun Watson hater bandwagon. Is that a reason for you to fade Amari Cooper, or do you think Amari Cooper in the vacuum is still going to be okay?
No, we've seen Amari Cooper produce with not great quarterbacks, and it's not that I hate Deshaun Watson. He's just not Joe Flacco. That was my joke. Last year, Amari Cooper, he had. If you tell me someone in their year 30 season, he turns 31 in 3 days. Happy birthday, Amari Cooper. If you tell somebody in their year 30 season is going to have their greatest yards per reception of their entire career by almost 3 yards, like there's something special. I think Amari Cooper is really thriving in this Cleveland Browns offense. He is the wide receiver one there. Even with Deshaun Watson, who I'm not as high on everyone else as, there are people that are a lot lower on him than me, just to put that out there. I think Amari Cooper is going to be just fine.
Yeah. I still can't get myself to do it. I don't draft Amari Cooper. It would take someone. I'd buy him for a second, probably, if I needed it, but I built wide receivers out. So, like, it'd be even hard for me to pay that. And I keep saying this, that, like, I'm not in on the 2025 class. So I'm willing to let go of seconds a lot easier for proven talent than I normally would be. Like a 2024 second, I wouldn't do it at all. But like the 2025 second, I might do it. It's just I have to see it with Deshaun Watson. All of his problems aside with him, I just need him to be a good football player again. Matt, you have another pick. Let it rip.
Well, it was a toss-up here, but I think I'm going to go with Stefon Diggs. I asked Jeff this. Funny, we were talking about Jeff not being here, so I can say this on the show now. There's nothing he can do to stop it. Is Stefon Diggs now playing with the best quarterback he's ever played with, passing-wise? I don't know if that answer. Obviously, it's only been a year for C.J. Stroud, and we know a lot about Josh Allen. But I do think as a true passer, when C.J. Stroud peaks, we could see one of those rare and especially in this day and age, the rare pocket passer that's just going to kind of sit there and just dimes down the field the entire way. I don't know if it's going to be short yardage stuff either, because C.J. Stroud was pushing the field last year. And I think Stefon Diggs is not going to be any less productive than he was this past year in Buffalo. It felt kind of underwhelming. I do believe we could see an uptick, because he also strikes me as a guy that's going to be a little angry this year, who's going to have something to prove. People love to use the term diva wide receiver. I mean, it is what it is. I think it kind of puts a negative on there. I think he knows what he's worth, or I think he values what he believes he is worth, and I think he's going to stand on that. I don't think that that's something that we should be negatively judging a player based on, but his confidence, I think, will translate to the field. And I say the C.J. Stroud thing more tongue-in-cheek, because I knew we'd get a reaction out of Jeff at the Scott Fish draft at Cincy, but I do believe that C.J. Stroud is a generational type of a talent. I think we saw it for the first time, especially with all the hate he got last offseason for one stupid test. We're seeing that, you know what I mean? As long as you put it together, put it on the field. He did that with less than stellar weapons. I mean, they were not bad weapons, but now the team has taken notice that he is a talent and have acquired assets to make him better. And I think because of that confidence from the team, adding players to the Texans, players like Stefon Diggs, I think it's going to amplify everything. And I think that Stefon Diggs will be better this season than he was last season. I don't think it's over quite yet for Stefon Diggs.
You're probably the most positive one on him. And it was funny you mentioned like how we were fading CJ Stroud off of, and like, let's just say what it is. It was a brand new test. This wasn't like a tried and true tested test. This was someone said, hey, I made up this test. Let's give it to your quarterbacks. And then we were ready to call CJ Stroud radio at that point. It was wild. Like I've never seen us like hard pivot so quickly.
Damn.
With that being said, Joey, how do you feel about Diggs? Look, to me, it's hard to pick Diggs. It's hard for me to pick any of these wide receivers, but would you pick Diggs over Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, and DeAndre Hopkins? These other guys, like to me, it's easy to say that Stefon Diggs isn't the number one. I could say that for Cooper Kupp, but Ridley and Hopkins, I could argue they're number one. But I guess like Will Levis is like a big factor. Does that bother you?
I would take Diggs over the names you just mentioned. I do think he's going to be in a little bit of a cluster there in Houston, but I don't think Matt's too far off saying he might be playing with the best quarterback of his career. And I don't think Jeff would take that too hard because he did travel to Ohio State. So Jeff loves Ohio State just as much, if not more, than he loves the Buffalo Bills. But yeah, I'm still in on Diggs. He didn't seem like he was all there last year. So talking about playing angry, he could come in play angry this year. But this is kind of the break for me, where it's like I'm kind of done giving up too much to get these players. Like maybe if I knew I had a late second, I'd give it up for Diggs. Or if I'm making a playoff push, maybe I go get Diggs. But Diggs might not be somebody I'm drafting on my team. I do want to say I'm not in charge of graphics, but if the thumbnail for this video is not Stefon Diggs in the front of a shopping cart with his arms like this, what are we even doing here, Jagger? Like, come on.
I know. He's getting really cheap now. Keep trade Cuddy's the wide receiver 43. That's pretty significant. And for football guys, it's wide receiver 38. It's only 5 slots, but that feels like a lot. Like that 4 and a 3 in the front. Like it seems significant. At like wide receiver 43, I might kick the tires and see, like, I've really expanded and started dating older players for fantasy, so like it's just it'd be really easy for me to swap him for, let's say, like Ricky Pearsall. If I have like a win now team and I need a wide receiver 3, I might do that. So
okay.
It's intriguing to see how much he costs. But with that being said, Joey, you are up with your next pick.
Yeah, I'm going to take a guy we kind of mentioned, Calvin Ridley. He's coming in at 29. He's going to turn 30 in December, but we know that he had a year off. So he doesn't have as much mileage on him. He's going into a Tennessee Titans offense that's being set up for Will Levis to succeed. If Will Levis is going to succeed, he's going to do it with Calvin Ridley the next few years. A little fun fact about Calvin Ridley last year is he left the most points on the field due to pass interference. It was only about 3 points per game that he was giving back to the players, but 3 points per game, add that to his fantasy totals, it's a bit extra there. So I'm good with Calvin Ridley. I did say that was the Stefon Diggs was kind of the break, but I actually would go out and trade for Calvin Ridley. I do think he can help contribute to your team now and for the next few years.
Yeah, and it's to me it was a big usage thing to get into the vibes talk or the film talk, depending on whoever you want to talk to. It's when they used them in the slot, it was fine. But like no one told Doug Peterson that you could play Calvin Ridley in the slot all the time, not just when Zay Jones is there. So that it was pretty bizarre to see. So it's like, and I definitely think that this next coaching staff might be more willing because they moved Jamar Chase all over the formation, move him in the slot. So like, maybe they'll be creative with it. Matt, who do you like more at cost? Like, do you think it's Calvin Ridley over DeAndre Hopkins, or do you think it's back to back and you just pick your poison?
I think at cost, you got to go with Ridley. But I don't think I'm that far off because I'm not high on either one of them. I think we're going to have to figure out what Will Levis is before we can really accurately project how this offense will be. They just got the new coordinator from Cincinnati, or the new head coach was the offensive coordinator from Cincinnati. Callahan, I think is his name. And I think that we're going to see a Tennessee offense that we're not used to seeing. I think we're going to see – I mean, it's new. There's no Derrick Henry. There's a new head coach. They're getting receiving weapons. I think it's going to be different than the Tennessee we're seeing, but I didn't like the Tennessee I saw for fantasy purposes, so I'm kind of avoiding this altogether. I also think that Calvin Ridley's probably going to be with the worst quarterback he's had in his career. And that's – I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not what we should do to project a player, but I do think that – maybe it's like a Desmond Ridder type of a scare for me, where I don't think Will Levis is Desmond Ridder, but I do think that when you have a tier drop off at quarterback, like from Lawrence to Will Levis, and I think that there is a significant drop off there, I think that we have to take into account that Calvin Ridley may not be the same guy that we're expecting him to be. And I think that 3 teams as a first round pick in 2018 gives me a sign that maybe he was overdrafted. And maybe he's more of a mid-tier type of a receiver, and I just don't want to go after. I don't want to go out and get older mid-tier receivers. I want the guys that could potentially, pop off a game or two.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know I'm debating on who to draft here next, and I guess I have to take a running back eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and take Alvin. Actually, no. I'm gonna wait to take a running back because I'm back to back. I'm
What are
gonna
you going to take?
I'm gonna go the hard pivot, and or at least a good segue for DeAndre Hopkins. To me, I'm DeAndre Hopkins at cost. When you look at how he was targeted and how he was used when Levis was in. Granted, it's a new coaching staff, it's a new day, but I do think he's another one of these category where he's an elite player, and they're just going to keep peppering him with targets. And he's so cheap. He's the wide receiver 66 right now. Like to be honest, like I think I'm going to be bullish and go out of my way to acquire more of him because you got to think that if anyone has has like top 12 upside every week out of these players, like what's the difference between DeAndre Hopkins and Mike Evans at this point? Like to me, it's not really that much. Matt, with when you have that lens, does that make him look better at cost?
Yes, it absolutely does. I actually was getting buyer's remorse here when I just had that last question hurled at me. But with wide receiver 66, yeah, absolutely. I think I would like to change my answer and just say that I was wrong and then move forward and act like it never happened. Because, I mean, wide receiver 66 might as well be free. I mean, because I think that any manager that has him, if you threw an offer out, it really, I don't think, outside of an insulting offer, I don't think you would be rejected. I think that a manager would be happy to let him go. And I think that if you were the guy trying to acquire him, you wouldn't have to pay a premium price to get him. Mm-hmm. So he might be the perfect player in a draft like this to acquire late. And it's funny because he was drafted late. And, you know, I think wide receiver 66 is free. And I think he's not – if this were 10 years ago, nobody's trading DeAndre Hopkins. But it's not 10 years ago. He is an endured player. And I think that he is somebody that can help you win weeks. So thank you for the context there. And absolutely, I would change my answer with that context. So thank you.
Yeah. And even like the football guys consensus, he's still the wide receiver 60. So it's not like a massive discrepancy between market value and then the expert value. It's just interesting. And a lot of it again is that, and here's why I like to talk about the difference between linear cost and like actual cost. Cause like he's 66, which he's still cheap, but like, that says that he's a third round pick. Would someone give you a third round pick for DeAndre Hopkins? Like again, it's just like another second for it. Like it just makes you wonder. And like now I'm just eager to get off the show and make trades for DeAndre Hopkins when you go to price. And then now I'll take a running back. My next guy is Alvin Kamara. Again, it's someone else who's dirt cheap. And when you talk about Derrick Henry and what he did, Alvin Kamara is the reciprocal of him in almost every facet. Derrick Henry was pretty inefficient last year. Alvin Kamara was very efficient. Derrick Henry doesn't catch passes. Alvin Kamara does. Derrick Henry has Lamar Jackson who runs and is a decent quarterback. Derek Carr is a terrible quarterback and doesn't run, so he's probably going to be dumping off. So when you have all that being said, like, why don't we love Alvin Kamara a lot more? And again, it's really made me come around to how I think about these olds. He's the RB27 right now on both Football Guys and Keep Trade Cut, which, as we alluded to earlier, after run back 20, it's nothing. So, Joey, I know you're pretty bullish on Kamara. Have you acquired any? Have you seen any trades go down? What do you think is the price for him right now? When you think about actually making a trade?
A draft pick, I think you could easily offer a second and get him at this point. You know, I think the shine is off Alvin Kamara because his touchdowns have been down the last few years. But here's the thing about Alvin Kamara. You don't need him to score touchdowns to get fantasy points. What he gets out of the backfield, you mentioned Derek Carr. You know, he can't chuck it downfield anymore, so he's probably going to be checking down. The points he gets in PPR leagues, so the receptions, completely makes up for the touchdowns for me in my case. He's not just a receiving downs back. He can run through the tackles as well. Yeah, I think a second-round pick gets it done for Alvin Kamara. You mentioned Ricky Pearsall. If you find a team that needs a wide receiver and they have Alvin Kamara, you can maybe make that trade. I'm in on Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, it makes sense for me as well, obviously, since I picked him. Matt, what are your thoughts on Kamara? Does being a Saint bother you at all? Are you still good with them at cost?
No, it bothers me, but we've seen Alvin Kamara do well with the Saints, and we've seen him do well regardless of the quarterback. Obviously, his numbers were a little bit better pre-Carr, but I don't think that they've been bad with Carr. I think he's been appropriately selected here. I do think the running backs that have gone before him, I'm just kind of like perusing over the list. I think the ones that have gone before him should have gone before him. I do think he probably could have gone over some of the receivers that we've taken, but I don't think that this is an unfair spot for him because I do think that there's kind of a split in the community where some people are like, all right, he's going to rebound. You're going to get a good value for him if you acquire him. But then I also think and kind of agree with the side where it may be over. We may have seen the best of Kamara, and we're going to just continue to see him. He'll be viable long-term in his career because of his pass-catching skills and because the game is such a space game now. So he doesn't have he doesn't have to take the ball between the tackles. He can just be a dump-off guy, and he will be viable. But to what caliber of viability, I just don't believe it's going to be that high.
Yeah. Joey, you got your last pick here because we know you got to get out of here.
I'm gonna take an old. We talked about him. I feel like 45 minutes ago. I'm gonna take Travis Kelce. Is anybody wait? Did I make that move where somebody took him and I didn't realize it?
No.
Nope.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna take Kelce. I think he's he's 34, but I think he still has. We know one season left in the tank. Does he win his third Super Bowl and then walk off in the sunset with his beautiful, beautiful, probably wife at this point? Let's all be honest. They're probably married. We just don't know it. I think that's the only reason we see him walk away. I talk about narrative analysis. We've seen Travis try to mirror everything Jason does. So we know Travis is most likely going to want to play at least 2 more years in the season to kind of equal his brother. He's the best tight end left on the board. He probably still might be the best tight end in the league, even at 34. He's the number one option in that Chiefs offense. If you're going out to make a trade for a tight end to win now, then there's no better option than Travis Kelce.
I was surprised that he slid so far. I kept moving him down. Like I'm working on a real show sheet for timestamps and stuff. And I keep moving him down because I thought he would go. But I was like, I don't need a tight end. Y'all do. But it's like
all value.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like you mentioned, he's going to put up wide receiver 1 numbers, guys, at tight end, not just like tight end 1 numbers. He puts up wide receiver 1 numbers. It's pretty much a no-brainer. We'll keep it brief there because it's Travis Kelce. What more can you say? Matt, take us home here with your last pick.
I'm going with Mr. Unlimited, Russell Wilson. I think that, Look, I don't think he's as bad as we think he is. I think he's just kind of a dude that we wouldn't want to hang out with. So everything that we kind of do analysis with, we base on the fact that I also probably wouldn't like this guy because of his personality. But Russ wasn't awful under Sean Payton. Now, obviously, he is not with Sean Payton anymore. He is now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Pittsburgh is also changing kind of how they do their offense. And I don't believe that Justin Fields is going to be that much of a challenge or competition as we once did when the moves first kind of started coming out, where they got both of them. And I think everybody was like, oh, Justin Fields is taking this job by week 2 or 3. I don't think it's close. I think that Russell Wilson at one point was a borderline Hall of Famer. I think that Justin Fields is a player that probably is a backup quarterback with a skill set that gave him some starting upside. But Russell Wilson can still throw the ball. He's going to have some decent players around him. I don't think that there's anything to write home about, but I do think that Pat Freiermuth as a safety net is a good tight end, maybe not great tight end, but I think he's a good tight end. I think that George Pickens has the potential to break out and be a star number 1 receiver in this league, and I think that he's probably going to have the best quarterback he's ever had. I know that's kind of like the trend I keep saying with the players that I'm taking, but I just like the going after guys that have the highest upside. And while I don't think this is the best set of skill position players that Russell Wilson has ever had, I do think that we're not looking at the fact that he's got pretty good guys around him. 2 good running backs, a good tight end, decent receiving core, and I do think that he will have a little bit more of ad-libs in this offense than he did with Sean Payton, because I think that Sean Payton was a pretty intense coach that tried to coach that out of him, and I just don't think that's the player that Russ is. I think he's got to have a little bit of backyard ball, a little bit of the play breaking down for him to have that magic that we saw in Seattle. So for a late round old guy, I'm taking Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I flirted with taking him, but I was like, I need Kamara. So like again, I think it's wild that Derek Carr is going ahead of Russell Wilson right now. That's wild.
Ugly.
Yeah, that's like, and I know it's one spot, but that is egregious. I know we joke about rankings, but like, what did Derek Carr do last year that made you say, yeah, he's definitely better than Russell Wilson? Like, it makes zero sense, and the Saints have done nothing to make that better. So I think that was a great pick. And we got to get Joey out of here. So I will go ahead and thank you, Joey, for being here. You've been a great Jeff.
Oh,
You've done excellent in your role of Jeff. And I would cast you for the sequel.
wait, do me do my Jeff impression. Let me get sideways here. Jagger, I just want to thank you for having me on today. It's been a great time. No, I'll stop. I shouldn't make fun of Jeff like that.
That was actually pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty good.
I stopped. Listen, let's give a shout out to Jeff. 6th overall in the Fantasy Pros ECR for 2023. Way to go, Jeff Bell. I was happy to sit in your seat here today. But you, sir, are the true superstar.
Yeah. And Joey's with us. That's coming up on every Sunday. We have our start sit show. Yeah. He's a captain of that with Jeff. And like he just said, Jeff's top 6 in ECR, guys. So you should listen to what he says. Not me, because I didn't do it at all. So I didn't rank. And then with us is Matt, first time guest, hopefully not the last. He does IDP for us, also talks Dynasty, just like I said, overall ball knower. Thank you, Matt. And again, make sure to like, subscribe. We'll have the audio version the day after this one drops, and then we'll have a very little special IDP episode that's just on audio. So make sure that you check out. And in the meantime, we'll see you on the next one.